Geoholics.
Cheetah print dancing on the people, rolled up at the after joint, dancing on the people dancing on the people. I got people on the people dancing on the people with the people on the people, smoking CO2, dancing on the people.
Great. In a row, we've had some pretty good
stuff on. Taste the music, that's for sure. Welcome back to Geoholics. Thanks for listening. Episode 249.
249.
Yes, this is going to be a good one. I'm really looking forward to it. Before we get to that, we have to mention our episode sponsor, that being MLID, of course. Have you heard about Wingtra Ground? This is the latest and greatest thing from MLID and Wingtra.
All in one kit.
Yep, for aerial surveys. It combines all the elements of a ground control setup. GNSS receivers powered by MLID checkpoints and the necessary tools. It automatically connects to the Wingtra tablet, providing step-by-step setup guidance for fast and error-free base and checkpoint setup. It can be used independently for terrestrial surveys, including point collection and stakeout for topography, boundary mapping, construction, and GIS. All I know is everybody should have one of these. Find out more. Go to mlid.com.
That's right.
What's up, buddy?
Not much, man.
It's been like 5 days. This is an early one for us. It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
I just saw you Thursday. How much happened in the last 5 days?
Well, I watched 17,000 basketball games.
Oh, jeez.
Lots of fun.
Well, what if the Geoholics played the lottery? And we won? What would happen? Would we split that?
What would we do?
I don't know.
What else could we do more if we won the lottery?
We probably keep doing this.
Yeah, I think so.
Probably keep doing this.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like race.
Not too drag. Like, it shakes your soul. It's so powerful and unbelievable that it literally shakes your soul.
I know it's loud.
It's incredibly loud. Like, you would have no concept of how loud and powerful these cars are.
Huh.
Like the Top Fuel dragsters, it's ridiculous. It's incredible. But I mean, that was a highlight in itself. But that same evening, I went to the Off the Track concert, and guess who was playing? The Black Moods.
The Black Moods, really?
So I saw the Black Moods, I saw Buck Cherry, and I saw the King of Darkness himself, Alice Cooper.
Really?
Yes.
That's really cool.
Unbelievable.
Nice.
And of course, since it was just me, I got the VIP ticket, and I was like right there, second row for everything. It was incredible.
That's cool. That's right up your alley.
It was awesome. Speaking of right up my alley, today I had a really cool experience.
I heard.
One of the things I've always had interest in is being a lobbyist of all things. Like, I've always, I would love to be a lobbyist for land surveyors, right? Mm-hmm. So happenstance, I was at a bar. Go figure.
Shocker.
Sitting next to this gentleman and his wife, and we'd start a conversation, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, turns out he's the lobbyist for the Home Builders Association of Arizona. So I'm like, you know what? I'm like so envious. I'm like so curious about what you do. He goes, Kent, just come shadow me sometime. So today I shadowed him. The first step in becoming a lobbyist is figuring out if you want to be a lobbyist.
And you do.
And I'm not going to say too much right now, but all indications are, I think I'm cut out for this.
Okay.
But we'll see. Let's move on. Enough about me.
Yeah, you did talk a lot about you.
Let's bring in the Skyscopes song of the week. Skyscopes is an aerospace company specializing in geospatial and technology solutions for industries such as electric utilities, oil and gas and infrastructure, aviation services, geospatial services, solutions delivery, providing end-to-end workflows encompassing data collection, processing, and delivery tailored to client needs. That's a lot. Well, that's a lot right there.
It is.
By the way, they're going to have us do our podcast with them from
the hangar.
Oh,
that's awesome.
It's going to be amazing. To find out more, go to skyscopes.com, and that is spelled SKYSKOPES. What do you got for us this week, Sean?
That strange collection of sounds is a group called Sophie Tucker. And that song was Purple Hat. Sophie Tucker is a musical duo consisting of Sophie Holly-Weld and Tucker Halpern, known for their eclectic blend of electronic, dance, and house music infused with global influences. Formed in 2014, the duo gained international recognition with their 2016 hit Drinky, which was nominated for a Grammy. Their debut album, Treehouse, also received a Grammy nomination. Sophie Tucker is known for their vibrant, high-energy performances and multilingual lyrics, often incorporating Portuguese influences.
Hey, like I said, I love our listeners. I
know.
love our guests. I love the fact that they have this unique sense or taste in music.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, we have to mention every time, if you haven't subscribed or followed the Geoholics playlist on Spotify, you got to do it. It's got probably up to 16 hours of music now. Every single guest from every single episode. We're on episode 249. So that's 249 different songs.
16 hours of music.
Yeah.
Somewhere right around there. Yeah, it's crazy.
crazy.
I just noticed this shirt really accentuates my man boobs. Something's going on here. We got to change this angle or something.
God, now I can't stop looking at it.
I know it.
Why did you have to point that out?
We are
need some pasties or something to cover up those nipple action?
Now I got a complex. This is not good. All right. We are in the Altera studio, Altera Central studio. Altera Central is the authorized premier Trimble dealer for surveys, mapping, GIS, forensics, and marine equipment in Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, and New Mexico. They also offer field supplies that can be delivered right to your job sites.
They can.
All backed by a service department with one of the fastest turnarounds in the nation. To find out more, go to alteracentral.com.
Do that.
And be sure to go to the Geoholics website, thegeoholics.com. Go to Marketplace, I believe.
Yep. Scroll down to
Altera Central.
Yeah, you'll go right to their whatever used equipment they have.
Yes.
Good quality stuff.
Yes.
It
really
changes
good
all
quality
the time.
stuff. Yep.
You need to ramp up quick. Check there first.
All right. Next up, we have the Hexagon Weekly Pro Tip. Hexagon is a global leader in digital reality solutions, combining sensor, software, and autonomous technologies to empower an autonomous future. Mm-hmm. Their solutions are utilized across various industries, including manufacturing, infrastructure, public sector, and mobility applications to enhance efficiency, productivity, quality, and safety. Also, coming up, Hexagon Live, which the Geoholics will be at this year.
We will.
That'll be in Las Vegas, June 16th through the 19th. Really looking forward to that. First time attending that event. I hear it's a doozy.
Oh, really?
Yes.
A doozy, you say?
A doozy. To find out more, go to hexagon.com. What do you got for us this week?
All right. Well, this guy's been in the news a little bit. Nice little timely quote. All right, here we go. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. That was Mr. Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. A lot going on with that guy.
Yeah, man, he is everywhere.
He is everywhere for good and bad. Let's face it.
All depending on how you look at it.
Whatever side of the aisle you're on, I don't know.
The media spin that day, he's either the savior or the devil.
It goes both ways.
It goes both ways.
Sometimes the same day.
Sometimes both. Yes.
Next up is the NLC prep question to make you think.
Interesting.
I love these. And we're giving away, what did I say, $10, $25 gift cards to whoever sends in to info.
Yeah, you keeping up with that?
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We've got winners left and right. All right. This NLC prep is for those dedicated to passing their land surveying exams the very first try. Mm-hmm. What do you got for us this week, Sean?
Here's the question. What are the sources of measurement errors? Mm-hmm. This is a select all that apply. A, instrumental. B, environmental. C, random. D, personal.
Personal. That's an interesting one.
It is.
Interesting.
So send in your answers to those questions to info@thegeoholics.com. We will randomly select a winner that has selected the right answer and send you some gift that Kent will remember at some point when he remembers to send those out. To find out more, go to nlcprep.com.
Yes. Really good. Dude, you overachieved on that one. That was amazing.
Yeah, I really think I did.
All right. Next up, before we get to our guests, we have the GeoNet count of the week. Love this this part of the show. GeoNet, of course, is the world's largest blockchain-based RTK network, providing RTK service precise enough for professional survey, construction, autonomy, and drones. What is the updated count, Sean?
Current count, 14,121 satellite miners, up from 13,319 last week.
Which was 5 days ago.
Yeah, I know. That's big.
800.
Yeah, that's a big one. 4,377 cities, 142 countries. You got to check this stuff out. Even if you're not sure about crypto or blockchain or any of this stuff, still go check it out. Go find out more. Geonet.com. That's GEODNET.com. Be sure to click on the Find a Hex tab to see if you can put one on your house or place of business today. How's it coming on your project there? Putting on one at the cabin up in Pine there, buddy.
Here's how I'm going to leave this. My hex is still open. My hex is available.
Okay. All right.
So
I don't know if
we're trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
We're trending in the right direction.
Yeah. All you have to do is go to geonet.com and just buy the thing and be done with it.
You make it sound so easy.
Well, our next episode is probably Thursday. So you got a solid 9 days to do this. So the next time I ask you, you can say that you did it.
Okay. Peer pressure.
They're only one of our best friends in the program.
They are amazing, indeed. All right. Next up, our guest this week is presented by David Evans and Associates. A little bit about David Evans. What sets DEA apart even more than the quality of their work is the quality of their relationships and the commitments they make. The DEA difference is reflected in 6 commitments and the seriousness with which they make them. Those commitments are clarity of expectations, huge one, effective communication, accountability, collaboration, creativity, most importantly, trust. To find out more, go to DEAINC.com.
You got to let me read that from now on because no one believes you when you read it because you work there.
Oh, yeah. I get it. You're probably
biased.
right. I'm going to change that to blue text next time.
You got it.
All you. All right.
Let's get our guest in. Hey, we did 12 and a half minutes.
That's not bad. Yeah. And I got a little winded about myself.
I know.
So
typical.
We are good to go. We've got Sean Gorman with us. He's with Zephr.xyz. And a little bit about Sean before we let him talk. He was born in Austin, Texas. I was just there 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Had a really good weekend there. His father was in the Air Force, so they lived all over, including places like Germany, Philippines, and Washington, D.C., of course. He attended Jacksonville University, University of Florida, George Mason University. I believe our guest is well educated tonight. He's probably going to make us look like idiots.
Well, we do good by ourselves.
Yeah.
He will further reinforce our idiotness.
Indeed. His hobbies include mountain biking, backcountry skiing, and he's also he was very much so into rowing.
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit more.
We're going to talk to him about that. He is the co-founder and CEO of Zephr.xyz, as I mentioned. Passions include the intersection of geospatial technology, economics, and policy. Career highlights, we're going to circle back on this too. 3 startups, 3 exits to Esri, Maxar, and Snapchat. His momentary 15 minutes of fame was around his dissertation, which we need to find out more as well. Sean, welcome to the Geoholics. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being patient with Sean and I as we filled up the first 15 minutes.
Yeah. He stuck around very well.
Yeah, he did great. He didn't leave us. That was great. Yeah. All right. So first of all, one thing, talk about the rowing career. Did that get you like a scholarship or something like that? Or is it just something you do for fun?
No, it's probably the reason I went to so many schools was so I could continue to row and have the flexible schedule to do it both at the same time. But I had delusions of going to the Olympics that didn't quite work out. But
that's cool.
Spent way too much time sitting backwards on rivers.
Yeah. So was this like crew?
Around.
Was this like crew?
Yeah.
And there's like 6 people in the boat or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so curious about that. So do you have to everybody has to be in unison in order to be most efficient or effective? Is that right?
Yeah. Timing is kind of the key for going fast.
Yeah. And what's the person's name who sits in the front of the boat and tells you what to do?
Yes, the coxswain.
The coxswain. I knew it.
There's got to be some kind of metaphor with that, though, of looking where you've been instead of where you're going or something. Isn't there something about that? Or sitting, it's the back seat of the station wagon analogy,
Yeah, the suicide seat.
Yeah, you're in the very back, so you're always looking where you've been instead of where you're going, something like that.
Yeah, I've been in one of those seats before.
Yeah, I have too. They don't make those.
For some reason. I
don't know why they don't have the children.
I don't
right
understand
in the back where you get rear-ended.
It's like lawn darts. Why don't they make lawn darts anymore?
No, they do.
Well, they're hard to get.
Yeah, they are hard to get.
You get them on the black market these days.
Right.
All right. So I'm super curious about your 15 minutes of fame. Talk about that just a little bit.
When I was in grad school, I started off doing research about the digital divide and whether or not fiber optic infrastructure was making a difference in economic growth. This is kind of updating myself as I was, kind of back in the .com boom. And so we built out this big database of where all these fiber optic cables were across the United States. When I got into George Mason, I took the database with me, and we're going to start looking at it internationally and get like transoceanic submarine cables in other countries and so forth. But about a month into the grad program, 9/11 happened. And shortly thereafter, George Mason got this earmark from Congress to do critical infrastructure research. And so I went to one of the professors at the school and said, hey, I have this database. Do you think it would be interesting for critical infrastructure research? And she was like, yeah, looks great. Let's put together a proposal. So we wrote something off and sent it off to this new research center that had been announced but had no staff. And so we didn't hear anything for months. So we just figured it was boring and not interesting. And after a couple of months, we got a call, and they had hired a director out of government. And he said, hey, can you all come in? I want to know, is this database like simulated data, or is this real data where the actual fiber is? Like, it's real data. Because back in the .com boom, all these fiber optic providers wanted to advertise and they say, oh, we're trying to show there's a link between economic growth and fiber cables. So they're like, here's our maps, go digitize them. And so when we showed all this to the new director for the research center, it's like, in government, we've been trying to find this data for years, and they say they don't have it. Can you come give some briefings? And so, yeah, sure, happy to come give some briefings. So we went, George Mason is just outside of DC in Fairfax, Virginia. And so, we went to all the 3-letter agencies and gave them the briefing on our little project. And at some point, folks started getting a little bit unsettled that all this was open data that was available, and, a grad student had put it together, and, started asking questions about how is data secured, is it classified, et cetera. And kind of as this like hubbub's going on, a reporter from the Washington Post heard about it and was interested. She came out and spent like 3 days with us, going around as we briefed people and just kind of hanging out as we did research. And then she disappeared. And similar to like the first time, like nothing for like a month. And I think finally it was like a slow news day and there was nothing else going on. And they slap it on the front page of the Washington Post that grad students' dissertation is national security threat.
Oh, wow. That is not where I thought this was going.
Right. And you're reading that like, man, who's that guy?
Not where I thought he was going with this story. That is hilarious. Wow. That's awesome. So you moved around a lot as a kid, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that help shape you as an individual? You spent time in Germany, the Philippines. I mean, you had a unique upbringing. Talk about that. How that made you the person you are today.
Yeah, definitely. I always had a fascination with maps and, helping, navigate. Although the irony is my sister was a way better map navigator than I was. I generally got bumped, and she was my younger sister too, which made it even more embarrassing. And she ended up being the map navigator because I would just end up staring at the map, getting interested in it, and forget to give the actual directions.
Right.
And we'd move around different places, and one of the places had like in addition to a science fair, they had like a history fair, and so I'd make these like topological relief maps on some historical event that happened, and was just generally fascinated and fixated by maps. And if you're always going someplace new, inevitably you're looking at maps and trying to figure out your way around the new place. And so I think it just kind of stuck in from an early age.
Yeah.
We can relate to that. And we love Germany.
Oh, we're huge fans.
Yeah.
Hey, did you see we got invited back?
Yeah. Well, sounds like we'll be
in Frankfurt in October. Yeah.
Hey, that's good. That's the right time of year to be there.
What he said. Absolutely. So talk about the startup experience you had. So you worked with Esri, Maxar. I did some research about that company, super cool. And then Snapchat, of course. Like, what was your involvement with those companies? And
I'm sure all of them were different, obviously, but
yeah. Talk about that a little bit. Those are big names.
Yeah. So it kind of all goes back to the dissertation fiasco I was telling you about. Like, basically what happened was we got so much news coverage and people coming to the university for interviews and stuff that the university lawyers came in and wanted to file patents on the research. But it was, pretty hacky stuff that we had kind of slapped together. And, we did some visualization in Esri. We did some, hacky MATLAB code. And so when they said, yeah, we want to go license this off, we said, we kind of feel bad about licenses. There's not a lot of substance to it at this point. I said, well, the other option is you can spin a company out of the university and then we'll license you the IP and you can go and try to build something. We said, well, that makes more sense in that, because we haven't really done a whole lot that you could actually turn into a real product. So we ended up taking, kind of the option B and spun a company out and then started building that out. And that company we did for about 7 years and ended up getting acquired by Esri back in like 2012 or so.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So what were some of the biggest lessons you learned, building these companies and then selling the companies besides making a bunch of money, hopefully?
I think the big thing is creating a good team and a good culture. And I think we've had a lot of repeat people across the startups, a lot of alumni that, either come to the next startup or people we meet at the company that acquired ends up joining one of the new companies. And so, you end up kind of building a family, right? And building those relationships and getting a really good group of talented people is a ton of fun. And I think probably the biggest success factor. It's going to the goal is to kind of make yourself the dumbest person in the room. If you can continue to hire and find people that are better than you at all the different facets of the company that you need to run, you inevitably are going to end up in a good place.
Got to tell you about our friends at Diamondback Land Surveying. DBLS was born out of a vision to create a company that would redefine excellence in the land surveying profession.
Our good friend Trent Keenan definitely does that.
That he does.
Today, they stand proud, having transformed that vision into a reality. Over the years, they have not only shaped the landscape of our industry, but also forged lasting relationships with our cherished clients, supportive friends, and invaluable employees.
Looking ahead, the future is bright for Diamondback Land Surveying. They stand poised to embrace new technologies, adopt innovative methodologies, and continue pushing the boundaries of excellence in our field.
To find out more, go to diamondbacklandsurveying.com. Hexagon, one of the new kids on the block.
That's right. Well, for us.
For us, yes. Hexagon is the global leader in digital reality solutions combining sensor, software, and autonomous technologies.
Yeah, their solutions free their customers to harness the rapidly increasing amounts of data, putting it to work to boost efficiency, productivity, quality, and safety across industrial, manufacturing, infrastructure, public sector, and mobility applications.
Hexagon's strategy targets the rapidly widening gap between the enormous amounts of data being created and the world's ability to harness it. To find out more, visit hexagon.com. Talk about what inspired you to start Zephr. Talk about what brought you to the decision to do that, and what's the mission of Zephr?
It kind of went back to when we were working at Snapchat. We were doing visual positioning systems for city scale augmented reality. So using the camera to figure out where you're at, and then being able to do interactive AR experiences around that. So one of the ways that we did that, and the company that Snapchat had acquired, is that instead of using like Google Street View cars or Apple Look Around cars, which are quite expensive to run those big fleets, is that we would use people's cell phones or GoPros. Basically, we would take commodity imagery, and then we would take aerial LiDAR or aerial off-nadir imagery that we could photogrammetrically turn into point clouds, and we'd co-register those two things together. So you'd get the kind of absolute accuracy from the LiDAR, and then you get the temporal freshness from the crowdsourced data on the ground. And then we'd fuse that all together to kind of build a really accurate feature database. So the whole goal is kind of drive down the unit cost of being able to build out these city scale positioning databases for folks. But one of the big spots where that kind of fell apart is if you got into like downtown London or downtown New York and you're in an urban canyon and your GPS on your phone starts giving you, wildly inaccurate positions, then trying to stitch that all together gets really hard. It kind of has to be in the ballpark to get it to co-register back to the LiDAR or your photogrammetric point clouds. And so when we left, we kind of kicked around this idea that maybe we could take some of those computer vision techniques and AI/ML techniques and apply them to GNSS data. And so, one of the big things that we would do with that is trying to get these aerial point clouds and terrestrial point clouds to agree on reality and where things were, and bring them together and co-register. We kind of wondered if we could do a similar technique where if we got measurements from multiple phones could we get those phones to agree on reality between them? Could we allow the phones to correct each other? Could we take all of those GNSS measurements from multiple devices, put into like an ensemble solver with like a loss function, get them to converge, and then use those to send error corrections back down to the devices? Like in the academic literature, we found out afterwards, they call it like cooperative positioning.
So like who's using Zephr? That was an awesome response to my question. But like, who is using Zephr? What's your target audience?
We've been doing pilots with rideshare companies. We've been doing pilots with some big tech companies around those AR use cases that we talked about as well. We've been doing some stuff with positioning companies. So one of the challenges in this is, can you take error corrections that are normally for high-end GNSS receivers and make them work on a standard mobile device? So we've been doing some work around that also.
Can you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I will say that doing like a PPP correction, if you're doing like a PPP float solution and using that to deal with your atmospherics, works well. If you try to use RTK just with a single receiver to correct a single receiver, that gets a little bit more janky and difficult. But if you're doing a cooperative positioning system where you're getting measurements from multiple devices and doing a relative distance kind of RTK correction, then you can use that RTK as a constraint in your solver, since you have at least one really precise position to go along with your kind of mediocre mobile phone positions, and then that can work out nicely as well. So it depends on the type of correction, how you want to integrate and manage that for mobile phones. But definitely with the antenna being packed in with all those electronics, it's a mess as far as we did a bunch of this in simulation, then we went out and got a bunch of phones and went to do it in the real world, and it totally fell apart. And it took a bunch of work to kind of sort that out.
So interesting. So like, how did you solve that problem then?
Basically, we just went from the ground up. We went, all right, we see these kind of results when we run it in like GNSS simulation software. And then when we go and we do it with mobile phones in the real world, we're seeing, non-random noise. And then, stripping down each component of that signal and the processing within the ensemble to figure out where that new noise is coming from, and how do we model that and account for it within the error corrections.
Yep. So how many different like constellations of satellites are you guys incorporating into these corrections?
Currently we're using GPS, Galileo, and Baidu.
Oh, okay.
So we've looked at like QZSS for some of the work we were doing in Japan, and GLONASS is kind of its own weird thing. So we've been kicking that can down the road for a while. But we can integrate any of them. It's just kind of like engineering time, and then also where we're doing the work, different constellations have different advantages, I'm sure, as you all well know.
Yep. So really interesting. When we were at GeoWeek, like it seems like every year there's like something specific that's being brought up by the people that
there's always like a buzzword.
There's a buzzword or something that's happening in the geo world that they all want to talk about. And this year, coincidentally, it was spoofing and jamming.
Spoofing and jamming.
That's all they talked about. So talk about how Zephr is dealing with spoofing and jamming.
This is another kind of...
One other question. Is it a real problem?
Depending on where you are in the world is kind of what's the magnitude of the problem. But I'd certainly, my opinion, 2 cents is that it's a growing problem for sure. And we kind of stumbled into this one as well, as that we were plugging away at our cooperative positioning work, and we've done a couple of blog posts about it and some podcasts and so forth. And this group in Ukraine came across the work and reached out to ask if that cooperative positioning approach would be helpful for defeating Russian jammers that they're having problems with doing medevacs. We had zero clue whether it would or not. But we figured, urban canyons, kind of natural jamming, maybe a similar kind of cooperative approach could help correct phones outside the jammed area, could help correct phones that are inside the jammed area. So we sent a bunch of devices over to Ukraine, or actually we just bought ones in a like electronics online market in Odessa, and then loaded the software onto them. And then they strapped them to drones, they put them on vehicles, they put them on tripods, and scattered them across kind of the front lines, and we soaked up a bunch of data as like passive receivers, and then started taking a look at the data and seeing, what the shape of that Russian jamming attack looked like. And then they have their own jammers as well, so we do some like blue force tests to get some control data against it also. And basically what we found was the cooperative positioning did do a pretty nice job of improving positioning while you're under these attack areas. But, once you get within a certain distance of especially these really high-powered Russian jammers, it just takes out the L-band entirely. And across multiple frequencies, L1, L2, L5, they're doing these kind of multi-frequency jammers that are pretty sophisticated. But what we found was, since we're networking all these devices together, that we could also map out the areas of effect where the jamming was happening, and then we could also localize where the emitters were and figure out the source of the jamming. And so kind of we looked at it and said, you can play this tit for tat of keep on trying to beat the Russians with different alt P&T techniques, or you could just get rid of the jammer. And so we were like, this seems like this might be a good way to go about it.
Bomb them. Just bomb the jammer.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, drop a bomb. No, that's not the solution?
Yeah. I mean, basically, yeah.
He's like, I can't say that, but yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. So
I want to pop in here.
Please do.
But you ask that question, and then I'll go, because I want to hear what you're going to ask. Keep going.
All right. So my next question is, like, as it pertains to spoofing and jamming, is this a problem in North America, or is this a problem in like Russia and Ukraine? Do we have these issues here?
Yeah, we definitely have these issues. They're just not at the same scale, and they tend to be mostly accidental, where you get like delivery drivers that will put a jammer so they can take a longer lunch break and block the GPS so the bosses can't track them. And then they'll park like at there was 2 instances in the last year where the Denver airport and the Dallas airport were both shut down because of local jammers were blocking the GPS for landing.
That's crazy. I had no idea. See, like now I know why this is something that's been brought up time and time again. This is crazy. People are getting so sophisticated.
And for the dumbest reasons too.
You want that extra time with your Jimmy Johns, right?
Yeah, I know. You need to savor that Jimmy John's for
crazy. Unbelievable. What'd you have, buddy?
Okay, two questions. This all just one, and it may be a terrible question considering that some of our sponsors provide this equipment. But do you see a scenario where separate GNSS receivers aren't going to be necessary, and surveyors can just connect to their phones and have enough accuracy to do their job?
I think it depends on the use case. I think for most surveying things, it's probably not an existential threat by any stretch. I think open sky in a kinematic scenario will get like 50 centimeters. On a stationary, we might get down to 30 centimeters, but there's a floor just mathematically around 10 centimeters that you're not going to get better than that. So I don't think it's ever going to get into the centimeter level precision. I think, more of what we look at are, where the unit economics might not make as much sense for having really high-end receivers. Whether that's augmented reality, autonomy, robotics, where these things get to scale, you want to have, a really low cost for a really large number of devices.
So interesting. So what role is AI playing in all this?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We definitely use some AI computational techniques on the back end with this ensemble solver that's taking all the measurements. But probably the more interesting thing that we've been doing more recently is we got this AWS grant for generative AI for geospatial. And what we've been trying to do is with that position, as you get kind of in that 50 centimeter range for your XYZ, you can also begin to bring in some sensor fusion with your IMUs and start to get some really nice orientation and 6 degrees of freedom measurement, really understand the pose and what the user's looking at. And so as we've been putting together, this kind of goes back to our snap work. One of the questions we would pose quite a bit is, if you could localize with just sensors, then you wouldn't need to run a visual positioning system, especially in areas where it might not make sense to spend all the money to collect all the data. And as part of that, we started to think of, if you can localize could you also, get the large language models, the generative AI models, to do navigation based on what you're seeing and connect those two things up? So we have this grant to see if we can train a LLM model with these sensors to do navigation and orientation. So, and this is especially useful in the smart glasses scenario. So, you're looking at something and it knows what you're looking at. You're looking at the Starbucks, or you're looking at the bakery that's next to the Starbucks, and it knows, that the bakery is to the right and the Starbucks is to the left, and can bring that positioning that you're getting from the sensors and then put it in the context of the large language model that knows how to connect that with everything else it knows about the world through this kind of spatial reasoning to do navigation and orientation.
Yeah. So like, how accurate are you hoping to get these mobile devices?
Sub 50 centimeters has been kind of our goal.
Sub 50 centimeters. Okay.
And then, that's achievable. The harder part is, say you want to get sub-meter or sub-meter and a half in every condition. So urban canyons, suburban, forested, high foliage. That's where it becomes challenging. Or actually, that's the challenge that we're working on currently, is to get that kind of meter or below consistency and a wide variety of different geographies and topographies.
So you guys are using mobile devices to triangulate. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
So what about?
It's kind of like what GeoNet is doing, or what Plexi is doing. Yeah, I mean, it's like the democratization of all this data.
Yeah, at the high level, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I would ask, so one of the constraints of traditional GPS is in urban areas and buildings, and is this something that you can use to supplement to help that? Because if you're in one spot next to a building, couldn't you use the other, even if it's cell phones, to kind of help pull that together? Is that
in
kind
theory? Yeah, I would think so.
Have you guys thought about that? I'm asking a person, and keep in mind, I just asked a person that has created 3 successful startups and is way smarter and way more forward thinking than we are. If you thought about that,
I have not created 3 succcul startups. Are you talking to me or talking to him?
I'm talking to the smart guy. Yeah,
Okay,
the smart guy with the good haircut is who I'm talking to.
Yes, of course.
But is that an application that you can take this, and kind of run with it?
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I mean, generally the big problem with urban canyons is like multipath outlier rejection, right? You're trying to find all the bounce signals that are giving you the distances that aren't right for your pseudo ranges and ejecting them from your solution. But the problem is, if you only have one receiver, the number of measurements you have makes it really hard statistically to figure out what the bad measurements are and what the good measurements are. But if you have, say, 10 devices that are getting measurements, then you have a much richer corpus of data for doing that outlier rejection. And you can start doing robust estimation and use a lot of these kind of fun computational tools to go at it, and then use those to generate constraints with that ensemble model that can begin to solve that problem.
Talk about the applications when it comes to like augmented reality and gaming.
Similar. One of the big challenges with scaling these things out is, visual positioning systems for doing augmented reality are just incredibly expensive. You have to collect a whole bunch of 3D data, typically using Street View cars or even with crowdsourcing. It's really expensive computationally. So you have data collection costs, you have computation costs, and then you have the cost for the user of running your camera, right? If you use like Google Live View and you're having to run your camera the whole time, 1, you're weird because you're holding the camera up to your face, and then 2, running the camera drains the battery, and nothing users hate more than their battery getting killed by an app.
Yeah.
And so that, some of the motivation for, can you do this all with sensors for doing that localization? And then if you can tie those sensors into an AI that can turn it into navigation in a conversational way using landmarks to help orient and show you where to go, then that's particularly exciting. Like the smart glasses that have really become popular are the Meta by Ray-Bans, right? They've sold like 2 million units, but there's no computer vision, there's no waveguide. It's just an AI assistant in your ear, a camera, and something where you don't look like too much of a nerd when you wear it.
Yeah. What about the applications when it comes to like rideshare apps and delivery services?
Similarly, it's and this kind of blew my mind when we started talking to some of the rideshare companies, is how much additional money they make on small optimizations and how quickly they can pick somebody up, or how quickly they can drop off food, right? And one of the rideshare companies was sharing that for every second that they can improve the time that it takes to do this on average, they make another $1.5 million in revenue.
Holy crap.
So even small incremental things, right? They deliver the food to the wrong porch, or they're on the wrong side of the street, and then they have to lap back around to get to the other side of the street, or they go to the wrong level in the airport. Like all of these things adds up to lost revenue, because if you're doing that, you're not picking up the next ride, and it's fixed fees on these things, right? When you go in, you get your bid, you get your thing, and so the faster they can deliver you against that set price, the more margin they're going to make, and the more rides that they can, or deliveries they can make across the network.
Talk about the challenges with privacy. I mean, there's a lot of data being collected here, and a lot of data being shared. Talk about the privacy concerns.
Yeah, for sure. That was one of the big worries we had early on going into it, and that was always a big mantra at Snapchat. Like, user privacy was a big value across the company within the culture there, and so we thought about it quite a bit. And we'd worked on some location things while we were there, and had seen kind of the blowback that can happen if you don't handle that well, also. And then just some of the negative repercussions across all social media with location sharing. So we were particularly sensitive to it from the very beginning. And so one of the things we did when we first started was architected in a way where we never know the user's position. And so we were taking raw satellite measurements from the phone, the pseudo range, the code, the carrier, the Doppler, and that's going up to the Ensemble server. But it's just generating an error correction, right? It's taking all these measurements, it's figuring out what are the best measurements that are there, which ones am I going to use to put into this error correction, and then we send the error correction down to a client on the phone, and the client uses that error correction to solve for the user's location. But we never have that location, just the client does, and then the client gives it to the app. So, you're using, whatever location-based app that you like, it then provides that to the app, and we're never in the middle of it, right? Just the trusted relationship you already have with your app provider, and that kind of keeps us out of that gray market business of kind of location mining.
Monson Engineering.
Yeah.
Love these guys. Monson Engineering is a leading supplier of surveying, GIS mapping, scanning solution products for the design build industry in the Intermountain West since 1974.
Wow, been doing it a while, mainly because they pride themselves in being your one-stop shop throughout all phases of your project, planning to completion.
From drones to lasers, total stations, or high-accuracy GPS equipment, they have what you need when you need it. To find out more, simply visit monsonengineering.com.
Let's talk about Aerotech Mapping for a little bit. Aerotech Mapping has been supplying high-quality geospatial solutions, services, and support for the AEC industry since 2002.
They have indeed. They also specialize in large-scale design-level photogrammetry for a variety of sectors within the AEC industry, including aviation, transportation, energy, commercial development, mining, public works, and wastewater, just to name a few.
Yeah, that's right. At Aerotech Mapping, they take great pride in the work that they do, all created by an amazing team of professionals. To find out more, visit atmlv.com.
So the smart Sean he's been amazing.
I've heard that term before.
Never been directed at
me.
The smart Sean.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's been a trooper. We've had some technical difficulties this evening, and thank you so much for hanging out with us. And let's wrap this up in style. So something.
Well, don't worry about it. Well, the technology these days will stitch it all together.
It'll be great. Yeah, I just know how hard it is being on that end when you're remote, and this, it's a challenge. So Sean Gorman, you're a rock star. So you mentioned your passion being the intersection of geospatial tech, economics, and policy. What's a recent trend or development in that space that excites you most?
Well, one, I should say that I'm definitely not the smart Sean. Like, the reason I'm talking is because I'm the worst coder engineer on the team. So I end up doing all the non-coding things.
Yeah.
So like any good idea that I've said, 99% of the time came from somebody else on the team. It's so there's a bit of caveat that I'm the talking head.
So this Sean is humble. What happened to this Sean?
No one ever said I'd be humble.
No, nobody ever accused you of that.
Right. I am clearly not the smart Sean and still won't admit it.
Oh, that's awesome. Sean Gorman, smart Sean, if you had unlimited resources and time, what geospatial problem would you dedicate yourself to solving?
Did ChatGPT give you that question?
What's ChatGPT? I've never heard of such a thing.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I'd say that the work we've done in Ukraine has probably colored it a little bit. Figuring out a way to provide GPS resiliency. Yeah. Whether it's a combination of LEO constellations or terrestrial fiber networks. There's so many cross currents right now. Like the FCC is having a big meeting on like alt PNT technologies and where we should invest. But like coming up for like a holistic way to solve that problem. Because basically, all of the options are great, but they also all have shortcomings. They don't quite get the job done.
Interesting.
And finding a way to do that, because the economy and defense and social things, so many things are reliant on GPS now. And the thought of that getting eradicated in some sort of a conflict is kind of terrifying. Or just an accident that happens as well.
Yeah.
So coming up with a way that truly makes that resilient and bomb-proof infrastructure that we never have to worry about would be pretty amazing.
Yeah,
bomb-proof infrastructure. I don't think
that sounds serious.
Yeah, right.
That sounds serious. So, what keeps you up at night?
Well, I get the GPS failing, but I think outside of that.
Spoofing and jamming.
And jamming.
Yeah, that's a good one as well.
Spamming and juving. You just created something new.
I know. Maybe I gave some people an idea.
The Geoholics is spamming and juving.
Spamming and juving.
It's going to be a new dance craze as well, I think.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to be laughing at that one for a while.
I bet you if you were actually, I bet you if you're actually listening to Sophie Tucker, that's the dance move that you'd be doing. Spamming and juving.
Yeah, that's the move my 8-year-old daughter does whenever we play it.
Right. That's awesome.
That's awesome. I got to record that. All right, we're good.
I'm sorry, we interrupted you. You were about to answer that question of what keeps you up at night.
I guess outside of juicing and spamming, I guess one thing that's a little scary is like the amount of AI going into like the drones for positioning and so forth, and not so much on the domestic side, but that's starting to get automated and these things being used as weapons, and just kind of seeing how sketchy and inaccurate and touch and go that can be. The thought of that getting automated is kind of terrifying. That sounds really depressing, actually.
I do have a question.
You do have a question.
I do. I'm
fantastic.
trying to contribute here. What advice would you give? A lot of people have ideas and like, what would be a great company and a great startup? What advice would you give to somebody? Because you're someone that is, it's like, let's have this idea, and it's actually worked out. And all people have these kind of startup ideas. What advice would you give somebody that has that $1 billion idea?
Yeah, I think the first one is like, don't get too attached to your idea. Because generally speaking, whatever idea you had is probably going to be wrong. And most likely, somebody else on your team is going to have a better idea. And it's that iterative process of testing things and building it and seeing what works and see what doesn't work. Is like, where you start was, the idea you thought was going to be the thing, and where you end up with something that actually becomes a successful product ends up 9 times out of 10 taking a wildly meandering path. And so I think a big part is, just not having too much ownership in that idea of just saying, there's a problem I want to solve. Is probably maybe the better way to go about it, and then you iterate through those ideas to see what actually is gonna solve the problem. But then generally, I think getting attached to a problem you want to solve versus like, this is the thing. I'm a hammer. I'm gonna go find nails. Like a lot of times that ends up being kind of the difference between success and failure.
So interesting.
Really is.
Yeah. So outside of geospatial, like how did you get involved in geospatial?
I got a geography degree.
There we go.
Actually, that is
I
a
knew there had to be
very
something.
common
Yeah.
place of origin.
Geospatial, geology.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
was that one of your 7 degrees? Or
Yeah, my hobby while I rode.
yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. So we talked about what keeps you up at night from a negative perspective. What keeps you up at night from a positive perspective?
Mm-hmm.
Or what keeps you going?
Yeah, and I think the thing I've been most excited about recently are this kind of shift to smart glasses. The concept that you can be interacting with the world without having to be looking at your phone, right? That you're no longer, your default isn't looking down, not engaging with people. Your default is looking up and seeing what's going on all around you, and not needing to use your hands or your fingers or the device, and just being able to talk to it and ask you to help out with things. It's obviously like, the geospatial navigation thing is what I'm particularly excited about, but there's so many like cool things you can do with that. As far as just being in the moment, like, out with your kids and they're learning to ski and you don't have to whip out your phone. You just say, start taking a video, and you get to continue experience watching them ski. Or, you're taking a walk and they ask you a random question like, why is it foggy, and why can I see something here, but I can't see something on the other side of the creek? And, 9 times out of 10, I got no clue why.
Right.
But you can just be like, hey, ask the AI why is fog harder to see through far away? And it'll be like, oh, because there's, light reflects off the water droplets, and as you get further away, there's more reflection because there's more water droplets and it becomes more dense and you can't see. I'm like, oh crap, I had no idea. And now the kid knows something.
Yeah,
useful.
but at one point, do they bypass you and not even ask you that question anymore? And they're just asking their own glasses, and then my involvement here ended at conception, and now you'll learn everything else from AI.
Yeah, and it's going to be a much more sharp inflection point where they realize like dad doesn't know everything, and dad's just been asking the glasses.
That is freaking hilarious.
At what point
you're gonna be called out on the carpet all the time, Sean?
At what point did your daughters realize that dad doesn't know everything?
They never realized that.
Oh, so you're still running high.
Oh yeah.
They 8-year-old definitely
emails, by the way. Yeah,
the 4-year-old
It's still a deluded. Yeah, exactly. Well,
do you have anything else that you want to get out there?
I was going to ask Sean if he's got something else about Zephr or anything else that he wants to get out there.
Y'all's questions are great. I think covered all the topics and things that we're doing. So this is fabulous.
Zephr.xyz. That's ZEPHR.xyz.
Yeah. Yep.
Correct.
Yep. That's where you find them. What you got, bud?
We do have one last question. We ask everybody, do you have a mantra that you live by?
I'd say 2. I'll give 2, just because one's kind of funny and the other one's more accurate. Mm-hmm. The funny one is a quote from one of my friends that's moderation is for cowards.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. That is
I freaking love that. That's
right up our alley.
Wow. I think it's a mic drop moment right there. Wow.
If you're gonna go hard. And then, probably more accurately is that, hard work outperforms talent the vast majority of the time. Mm. And that's kind of, the way we try to succeed at things is just put your nose to the grindstone and keep hacking at it and iterating and be flexible, and eventually you'll figure out something that works.
You know what? You could have stopped at moderation is for cowards.
Yeah, but you really hit the nail on the head with. I mean that's got to mean a lot to you, Kent. I mean you've been moderately successful with no talent, so I mean I
can relate to all
that.
Awesome. It's awesome. Well, Sean Gorman, in this case, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We apologize for the technical difficulties. I promise you when this comes out, it's going to be amazing. Hang on after the show. Let's have a real quick conversation. Fire us up, but let's get out of here.
Are we going to get out of here?
Yes, mercifully. Let's get out of here.
Put us out of our misery?
Yes, adding value and making friends. If anyone would like to be a guest on a future show.
You're just starting to hear that, aren't you?
You want to be on this show. Shoot us an email at info@geoholics.com. Purple Hat by Sophie Tucker. I love this song. Available everywhere. Until next time, everyone. This might be the best mantra ever. Moderation is for cowards. Hard work outperforms talent. Love that one as well. Most importantly, as always, be safe and healthy.